Hello. I thought I'd give a little tour of my GDPR toolkit so that you can see for yourself what it's about. So let's take a look. The first thing that you'll see is there are 4 folders, with the first one being Start Here, and that's where the guides are. So you've got the GDPR Fundamentals Guide. Let's just open that. And you will see that the guide here is about understanding how GDPR works and the basics of it. So if you have never touched GDPR before, this is the place to start. But a lot of us know a little bit about it, but not enough. So read this guide. It's written to be as plain as possible, so it's easy to understand, and talks about what is GDPR, what are the rights that people have under GDPR, what personal data is, what key principles are, and it keeps it light without going into too much detail. But you see, as it moves on, we're talking about what the difference is between, say, a controller and a processor of data, and that needs to be clear. Your obligations under law as to what you have to be doing. Do you need a data protection officer or not? So that depends on certain criteria, and it can help you decide. And there's other things here about organizational accountability and what the auditors might look for if somebody comes and looks at your GDPR from the regulatory body, either within the UK or within the EU. So there's quite a lot of information there for you to go through, and it tries to keep it light so you can read it pretty quickly and easily. The next guide is an implementation guide, and this is going to step you through GDPR one step at a time without trying to throw too much at you in one go. This is the implementation guide, and my key thing is about minimal viable compliance. What do you have to do to meet the minimum without overdoing things to get yourself compliant with GDPR? So we talk about what that looks like, but if you want to go beyond that, then there are some options within the guide so that you can take additional steps if you feel that that's necessary. So the guide is about getting going. So if you're starting from scratch, it will give you a very quick 1 day. This is what you could do if you're a very small business and you want to put it in place very quickly. There's a guide that tells you here what you should be doing from day one. And then the guide goes on to kind of a more fuller practical plan if you need it. So here we are. You can choose your route map, which is about defining what type of business you are and what type of data you're handling. So if you're handling, say, customer records and employee data, then that might be a very standard path for you. But it might be a very different path if you're handling, say, health records or details about children and those kind of things. So there might be a different path for you to follow for high-risk data. So it'll also walk you through that. And international transfers. So if you're transferring data over boundaries, even if you're using a SaaS solution, then that's something that you need to take care of. So this guide is about stepping you through the process, and it points you at each of the documents as you go through as to which you need to complete. So you'll see here, this one is saying complete the gap and action analysis workbook to work out what you're doing, what you need to be doing, and make sure you're on the right path going forwards. And it will step you through bit by bit each of the actions that you need to take, and whether you even need to take that action for your business. The rest of the toolkit then is broken into 3 components. You see the documents here in the core pack. You start with governance and scope records. You need to keep a record of who's in control and who's running your GDPR. Then there's an action plan workbook, like a project plan to help manage the actions. This was quite useful, and you'll see this a couple of times, that there are actual examples and example data in these things, so you don't have to look at it from scratch. So let's have a quick look at this one, for example. This is a data flow mapping for employee data, and just shows a hypothetical example so that you could potentially use something like that rather than just staring at a blank page when it comes to doing it yourself. There's a roper in there, privacy notice that you might wish to use and adapt. There's a data subject's rights procedure. So this is quite useful. If you need to respond to somebody's request for data about themselves, or to change something or to remove something, then you need a process that you can evidence and run so that you can remove those details or deal with them. So here is a procedure that you can adapt and adopt to your own that helps you do that. There's a training and awareness log, DPA, a data processing agreement template that you can use if you need to give it to a supplier about handling personal data. There's a response plan here and procedure that you can amend and use for yourself. So if something really does go wrong with personal data and there's a breach, you might have to report to the ICO or the country in question, the regulatory body, and explain what's going on so that they can help you. And then there's a short staff training guide that you can use. And again, you can edit it and adjust it and send it out to your staff with basic information about GDPR so that you can help them. If we look then in the conditional pack, which is only necessary if triggered by certain things, there's consent record tracker, a data processing impact assessment. This isn't mandatory, but it is kind of necessary in certain circumstances where you're looking at data and the impact of risk to that data if it hits certain threshold. There's various inventory logs and things and some bits to help you with transfer mechanisms if you're moving data between, say, the UK and the US or storing it on a SaaS service in another country. Then you need to make sure that you're on top of the transfer mechanism and how that's working. So there's a few bits there that are conditional and only necessary if you hit the certain criteria. And then in the boost pack, which is about extra maturity, go that a little bit further, there is a few documents to help you with that. There's a lawful basis register, a legitimate interest assessment that helps you work out what the laws and why you're processing data, and it is absolutely clear in your mind which laws you're relying on to process certain data, because you don't have to have consent for GDPR data under certain circumstances. For example, if it's part of a contractual obligation or a legal requirement. And then there's a couple of additional logs for data retention and that kind of thing. So that's the toolkit as a whole. I hope that gives you a good understanding of what it's for. The whole purpose is to be flexible and adaptable without overwhelming you with too much information.